everybody. Today we are back with another draft analysis for NCPL's Commander Draft. We're on number 21 today, and number 21 is Florian's team. So you guys will notice Florian has, or Flo, has a very similar team to Jonas's. The differences in their team is I think Jonas's team holds a little bit more bulk, while Flo's has a little bit more offense to it. So not to mention they're both played very differently. So I scored his overall team of 39.5. And you guys, I just want to mention that these scores, they're not I'm not some Pokemon guru. These are just what I'm looking at and what I see as a player from my perspective. By all means, please comment on these and let me know what you think of your own team without sharing secrets if you don't want to. I'm more than happy to see those. I honestly miss other people giving their thoughts on things like this. So that's why I created these in the first place. But so first thing we're going to notice is Flo drafted Rotom Heat as a captain. Very similar to Jonas in terms of this is a very reliable Pokemon to bring every single game. It can be offensive or defensive or utility based, so it's very good. Rotom Heat having defog is really nice to be able to have that option every game. So we're going to start off with the offense first, which I scored a 9. So like I said, his team has a little bit more offense than Jonas. That's why it's a 9. The offensive Pokemon we're going to look at today on this team is Rotom Heat, Hariyama, Arctozolt, Hoopa, Quillfish, Scyther, and Silvally Fairy. So with Rotom Heat, in terms of offense, we have, your typical Volt Switch, Overheat, then you have Thunderbolt. Some of the other options that he has is Nasty Plot and Discharge. That's kind of where it ends for offensive sets. We have Hidden Power available, so that is totally available to Rotom Heat. But generally, it's going to like that Thunderbolt and Fire coverage. So we're going to see that probably more often since he has some reliable defogging in Silvally. But generally, this thing will probably carry defog just as in case his team is kind of weak to rocks. So then next up we have Hoopa. So Hoopa being Ghost Psychic, having that ×4 weakness to Dark is a little bit middling, but at the same time being immune to fighting types is really great since his team kind of does have a fighting weakness as well in Arctozolt, Aurorus, and Odino. It gives him another option to switch into instead of Hariyama or Scyther or Silvally Fairy. This is a thing that's common in these top tier teams. The team might not look really great on paper, but it has a lot of options to switch into things. So like I said, immuning fighting is really great. He can switch up that switch in a lot. So and get Hoopa in for free, which is really great since Hoopa has very high special attack and good attack as well. So it can be mixed set or physical or special. So very good wall breaker. Hoopa can have Shadow Ball, Focus Blast, Thunderbolt, Nasty Plot, Dark Pulse, Calm Mind, Energy Ball, and then on the physical side we have Drain Punch, Fire Punch. I think it learned, Ice Punch, Knockoff. I believe it learns Thunder Punch as well. And then of course you have Psychic, Psyshock, and then Hyperspace Fury and Hyperspace Hole. Can't remember what Hyperspace Hole exactly does. I'm gonna check here. Skipped Arctozolt, sorry guys. Hyperspace Hole breaks the target's protection. Yeah, so that's really nice. It's going to be really nice for Flo if he versus a lot more defensive team. So as we're going to see coming up in their playoff match, he's versing Calvin. Calvin has been known to bring, subs and protects. Obviously, Calvin's going to be prepared for that, but that is something that's great about Hoopa. Able to bypass protect is super, super strong on teams that are going to have bulkier sets. So not to mention Hoopa being able to be physical or special, and with a plethora of coverage on both sides, make it really great to come as a choice scarfer or a wall breaker. Having base 110 attack and base 150 special attack It's I'm surprised it really wasn't picked sooner or fought over a lot more. But just Hoopa kind of just flew under the radar here, probably because that times 4 weakness to Dark and Ghost. But I mean, still, 130 base special defense, 80 base HP. It can afford to switch in on these special attacks. Obviously, not the times 4 ones, but it can afford to switch in and take these things. So, a common thing in these higher caliber teams by higher players is bulky offense. So being able to take an attack and fire back harder or fire back the same. So, but glancing over Arc Result, I don't know how I did that, considering it's the most prominent team member on this team and the other person that has it. Not to mention both Arc Results are on the top of the kill leaderboards. So you guys all know Arc Result by now. That Bolt Beak is incredibly strong. Having access to Blizzard under Slush Rush is really nice. Not to mention Blizzard will be 100% when the hail is up. Then you have Icicle Spear to break those subs, Icicle Crash, Low Kick, Rock Slide, Surf. If you want to get really fancy, Meteor Beam, Power Herb, and then Freeze Drive for that coverage is really, really nice. A very hard Pokemon to switch into. That Bolt Beam stab is really, really hard to deal with. So, not to mention Bolt Beak having, I think it goes, what does it go up to? Yeah, 85 power doubles if he goes first. So that's 170 plus stab. I mean, that's really hard to deal with. I mean, that's self-destruct really. So, but yeah, that's really what it's like for Arctozolt on the offensive side. It just wants to attack. Usually 4 attacks, but we see Flo use a lot of substitute to make sure that it's safe. A really good option, especially if the team has options to burn it or toxic it. A very safe option and to protect it. So, moving down the list here, another Pokemon that falls into the trend of this team, bulky offense, and all the other high caliber players, Hariyama. So, very good draft pick here. This guy is a really big menace in here. Very maybe glanced over by I guess other players. I think this is a very annoying Pokemon to deal with. It has really good coverage. It's extremely bulky. Can afford to switch in and hits very hard. So its abilities are great too. So Thick Fat, Sheer Force, and Guts. So I just want to mention, the reason that I'll mention all 3 of the things is just because I feel like, for newer players, it's important to mention all 3 of the abilities. Not to mention that this can be used to mix up opponents, right? You can mix up opponents by running Sheer Force, not showing that you have Life Orb, forcing them to calculate, things like that. You guys obviously know you're much higher caliber players, so you guys know things like that. But Guts, like you said, is generally very useful to make sure this Pokemon doesn't worry about being burned. But Assault Vest, Thick Fat is really nice as well. This team doesn't really have like a huge fire or ice weakness or ways to deal with it. So not like Robin's team. But Thick Fat still probably very useful to him. But for Hariyama's offensive options, has Close Combat, Knockoff, Heavy Slam, Stone Edge, Ice Punch, Bullet Punch, Earthquake, Fake Out, Fire Punch, Iron Head, Poison Jab, Thunder Punch. So you can see the coverage on this. So if it gets in, it's probably got a move that's going to be able to super affect you. Just give me 1 sec here. Sorry about that, you guys. So you can see the coverage on Hariyama here. Very wide. Every time he's going to come in, he's going to threaten with, a really strong stab close combat or something that's super effective if needed. Not to mention, it can come in as a revenge killer. And something that I mentioned way earlier back in the draft, I think this started with Zeb's team when I was mentioning the Hitmontop. When you have a bulky Pokemon like this that has pretty good attack and it has priority, it's extremely good. This gives you so many options. You can switch in, you can actually get the revenge kill, or you can force the opponent to switch out and get a fire off a close combat if you're making that prediction. it's very reliable to have a bulky Pokemon with priority, and extremely hard to deal with for the opponent. Hariyama also has setup, which I don't know if we'll see. We could see it really late into these games, considering they're best of 3, I believe. So being tricky and having a lot of mixed up sets is going to be very good. There's nothing wrong with having reliable sets either. A strong, reliable team is always going to do well. But Hariyama has Belly Drum and Bulk Up, so these are options that are totally good on Hariyama considering his bulk. If Flo is versing a very heavy, physically offensive team, Bulk Up is a strong option. He might not even need the Assault Vest, so he could run a Guts Bulk Up version or a Sheer Force Bulk Up, anything like that, and just make him extremely potent, especially with his priority. This makes it really, really strong. He can fire off Bullet Punch to make sure that he gets that KO. If his close combat after a +1 isn't going to KO, you can slam him with a Bullet Punch, and this is going to really, really help his team. So very, very good draft pick on Hariyama for those of you who did draft him. And then I will mention Quillfish. Very small offensive pool, but still good at being offensive. A more offensive-oriented defensive Pokemon. Having access to Swords Dance is really good. It can really catch people off guard because the speed is really not that bad. It reaches 295 at Jolly. So that's really not bad in this draft. That surpasses that 284 mark, which a lot of Pokemon have, which is kind of like the barrier. And then, Stab, Poison Jab, Stab, Liquidation is really nice, and Aqua Jet as well. So like I was saying, with Hariyama, having priority on these defensive Pokemon with decent offensive stats is really, really strong. It's like a get out of jail free card. You can switch in this Pokemon. You know that it has priority. You know that it's going to survive an attack. If he chooses to attack you instead, you can Aqua Jet, you get that revenge kill, or you can force the switch, right? Because the opponent knows that you have priority. So very good. And then an offensive/defensive option in Explosion is always nice, right? A kamikaze attack, that this Quillfish isn't going to do anything with Aqua Jet, Liquidation, or Poison Jab. Spikes aren't going to be worth it to you. You just Explosion and, potentially KO him on or take it down, chip it as much as you can, right? So. And then you have Scyther and Silvally Fairy. So this is not to say that Aurorus and Odino can't be strictly offensive Pokemon. They totally can. But on this team, we're not going to see them as often as the other offensive Pokemon. They're going to be used a lot to switch into things that the team is going to have a hard time with, or set up things like Stealth Rocks or Wish Pass, right? But Scyther, a really great Pokemon. I think it was T5. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not going to go through and look for it right now. But having access to Eviolite, 339 speed. I believe it's 309 or 339 attack as well. With Technician, U-Turn, and then Technician boosted new move, Dual Wing Beat. Technician boosted Bug Bite. And then you have Knockoff. You have Reliable Recovery and Roost. Psycho Cut, and I will mention Rock Smash because it's Technician boosted, but generally Dual Wing Beat and Bug Bite are going to hit extremely hard. You're probably not going to need one. But yeah, having that U-Turn, that reliable recovery, extreme bulk with Eviolite is really great. Obviously, the opposite side of this is he's ×4 weak to Rocks. So Rocks being up is really going to be rough for him if he's running Eviolite. A common trait on this team is heavy-duty boots are going to be important, and getting rocks off are going to be important. So, and then you have Silvally Fairy. Not going to go too in depth. Everybody basically has a Silvally at this point. Basically, Swords Dance multi-attack it's in my opinion, it's kind of broken in this draft. It's super hard to deal with, especially coming from a Fairy type. Having that base 120 stab is so strong. And then having the bulk to back it up, having Swords Dance, and then an enormous amount of coverage in Bolt Beam, Flamethrower, Heat Wave. It's just, and then U-Turn and Parting Shot and Defog on top of it. It's just a really, really hard Pokemon to deal with offensively if brought. Super great lead to be offensive. Really good Pokemon. The Silvally Fairy, definitely Probably the best Silvally to be drafted, just because fairies are extremely potent in this draft. They go pretty much unchecked, so there's not many good steel types out there that can just deal with them, right? Or poison types. So. And then I think that's it for the offense. We're going to move on to the defense now, which I scored a 7.5. So unlike Jonas's team, I'm just going to go back here so you guys can see the difference in this team, okay? So you're going to see all these offensive options here in Hoopa, Hariyama, Quillfish being able to be offensive and things like that. And then Rotom Heat. We're going to go over to Jonas's team here, and you're going to see Cobalion, which is very similar to Rotom Heat, very good offensive or defensive Pokemon. But then you're going to see these really big defensive Pokemon, which, don't get me wrong, they can be very good offensively as well. They just don't bring as potent of an offense, in my opinion, as Flo's team. So you're going to see Moltres, you're going to see Cofagrigus and Lantern. These are very bulky Pokemon that... two of them have Momentum in and Volt Switch and U-Turn, able to switch between each other. Lantern going really good in junction with Moltres, being able to Volt Absorb or Water Absorb. And then, Serena, pretty bulky as well. Very good attack, though, if needed. But you see the difference in bulk here, right? But let's go back over to Flo's team. So the defensive Pokemon we're going to talk about is Rotom Heat, Quillfish, Silvally Fairy as well, which I did mention basically in the offensive part. Odino, Aurorus, and I think that's all we have for a defensive Pokemon that we're going to look at. I mean, you can make any Pokemon any way, really, realistically. But what I'm doing here is breaking down what these Pokemon are going to be doing, 90% of the time, or most of the time. So Rotom Heat having good defensive options, especially in Levitate. His team does have some Earthquake weaknesses, so being able to switch into that and then Volt Switch out is really great, or fire for Toxic, or Pain Split, or Defog, whatever the case may be, or if it's set up Nasty Plot, right? So you have Defog, Volt Switch, Pain Split, Will-O-Wisp, T-Wave, Toxic, Screens, obviously, and then Trick. So Trick being a really great option as well. On Rotom Heat, it's not as good an option just because he's weak to rock, so heavy-duty boots are quite important. His recovery isn't super reliable, so those heavy-duty boots are going to be really good at allowing him to come in often, either Volt Switch, Defog, whatever the case may be, basically come in without a worry in his mind. And then you have we have Quillfish. Quillfish having Intimidate is really great. Quillfish and Rotom Heat able to switch between each other. The Intimidate is going to be really nice to make sure those offensive checks are being able to be checked. With that Intimidate, forcing them to switch out, potentially building up chip for Flo to come in and eventually take it down with something like Hariyama, or have Arctozolt sweep the team, or Silvally in some cases sweep. So it has Spikes, Toxic, T-Wave, and Haze being very important as well, especially in drafts like this. A lot of people like to set up, as we've seen all the way through this draft. Then you have Silvally Fairy, which I told you guys, Defog, U-Turn, Parting Shot, also has access to T-Wave and Toxic. Very, very strong Pokemon for him. Very good momentum-wise. Allows Rotom to not always be pushed into running Defog. If Silvally can totally run it, allow Rotom to run a more utility set, because Silvally can totally just run Defog, U-Turn, or Parting Shot, and then 2 attack moves for coverage. Since multi-attack is super strong, it's a really, really strong option on him. And then you have Odino, is basically cornerstone of defense here. I mean, Rotom Heat can totally be the cornerstone, but this Odino is going to do a lot of work for him in matches where he needs to keep his team healthy. That Wish Passing is really great. Heal Bell, since his offensive options, you have, Harry. Well, I mean, the Guts. See, this is the thing. So his team's not too worried about Will-O-Wisp or T-Wave, because Hariyama has Guts, so you really don't want to proc that Guts. Rotom's immune to the Will-O-Wisp, and then Arctozolt, while not immune to Will-O-Wisp, immune to T-Wave, so you can't really slow his offense down. Something really great about Flo's team, which is not in any of my 5 categories, being able to deal with these statuses. But then Odino has also Toxic, Knockoff, Yawn, T-Wave, and Healing Wish. Healing Wish being a really, really good option. If his Arctozolt takes a lot of damage, like you've seen in mine and Jonas's match, that Arc Result took a lot of damage right at the beginning of the match, probably, caught off guard a bit. You can have that Healing Wish in there as, a get out of jail free card. You're like, holy shit, didn't expect that. We're going to have to use this Healing Wish somewhere in the game, mid or late game. Let this Arc Result come back in nice and fresh. If by any chance he doesn't have Guts on Hariyama, gets burned, or Arc Result gets burned, that Healing Wish can also help him come in nice, full healthy, get that status healed, allow him to sweep or chip down whatever he needs to do again. Not to mention Odino's Regenerator. This is going to allow it to come in really, really often. Pair that with heavy duty boots or something like that. It's extremely obnoxious. Comes in for free, switches out, gets its health back. Very annoying Pokemon to deal with if you don't have any strong fighting types. On that as well, it does have fairy type attacks, so those fighting types sometimes might have a hard time coming in. That knockoff utility is really annoying. To send this out as a lead, obviously you don't want to be caught being passive, but very good to just send out as a lead, start knocking stuff off. Opponent's not going to want this knocked off. You click knock off anyways. He switches out to another mon. You knock off leftovers or something. It's going to help you in those later stages of the match. It might not help you immediately, but later down the road, if it's a long game, not having that leftovers on a Pokemon could be very detrimental to the match. Then we have Aurorus. Aurorus can, like I said, can be offensive. It's not just your typical defensive Pokemon, but Flo's team really appreciates having rocks up on the other side of the field to force the opponent to either defog away and not have rocks on his side, or just get that chip off for his team and Arctozolt to sweep, or whoever his late game sweeper is going to be, clean up, whatever it is. Aurora's having access to Stealth Rock, T-Wave, and Toxic, and then of course the patented Aurora Veil, which is going to help his team come in and just fire off attacks as much as he wants. Surprisingly, we haven't seen it from either of these Hail teams too much. I expect this to be used in the later start of the playoffs. It's just hard because it's a very passive move, is probably what the case is, and they don't want to be caught off guard setting up Aurora Veil and then be set up on and protected by Substitute or something like that. Substitute setup is something that could defeat that. But that Aurora Veil helps this entire team. The team's already bulky. Putting that Aurora Veil in really helps this team. Imagine Arctozolt under Hail and Aurora Veil. It's gonna Bolt Beak everything to death unless you immune it with Ground type. And of course he has a Bolt Beam combo. So I mean it's really hard to resist it with Ground type. You switch in a Volt Absorber. They're generally not very defensive. They're not going to be able to take whatever he's got as coverage. Stomping Tantrum is another perfect coverage move that it has. So it's a very hard Pokemon to deal with under the Veil and the Slush Wrap. Very, very the Aurorus is very important to this team's like strong offense. It doesn't need it per se, but this basically makes the team a lot more overpowered than it would without the Hail. So still very strong without it, but much stronger with that Hail. And then for Aurorus's coverage on the offensive side, he has Freeze Dry, Blizzard, Meteor Beam, and Earth Power. I will go back to Odino because I just want to mention Odino's set that I think I mentioned on... Can't remember. There's two people who have Mega Odino. But I want to mention this set because it's an extremely strong set. The set is used on... Mega Altaria. And I believe there's another Pokemon that uses this set. Really strong, can really catch people off guard, especially with its bulk. Calm Mind, Refresh, Draining Kiss, and then either coverage in Flamethrower or Wish if you want that extra recovery. Just really obnoxious to deal with. I mean, it's bulk plus that setup, and then Stab, Draining Kiss, you're healing 50% of that damage that you're doing. I mean, like I said, fairies are very unchecked in this draft. If there's no Steel type or really bulky Poison type, I mean, Draining Kiss is just going to kill everything after a couple boosts or even one boost. Very, very hard to deal with. I really hope I see that set at some point. Very strong, very good set. Really hard to deal with. So, Refresh. What Refresh does, guys, is it heals status, burn, paralyze, or toxic. So, having that Refresh, You're not worried about toxic. You're boosting your defense, your special defense. If you run max HP, max defense, or whatever the spread of EVs you need, and then you're boosting your special defense and your special attack. You can refresh off those statuses. More than likely going to be toxic, and then just draining kiss away for that recovery. So defensively, I want to mention it's similar into Jonas's team. Is there's some big weaknesses on the defense. That's kind of what makes me put this score down to a 7.5. There's some big rock weaknesses on this team and big earthquake weaknesses. As we know, earthquake is very common, and a lot of Pokemon have rock moves. Yes, rock is the accuracy of rock is not as reliable, but having multiple rock weaknesses is gonna make it really hard for him to just full on offense and not worry about it. Yes, he has options to deal with it, but those options can be easily middled down. I guess not easily, but like, if you're playing a really strong opponent, the opponent's going to be aware of that, and it's going to be a game of chipping those threats or those checks down and then firing off earthquakes and stone edges basically unchecked. So not to mention a lot of Pokemon that learn earthquake learn stone edge. So if you're thinking that you can switch in Rotom for an earthquake, fires off a stone edge to predict it. It's sometimes could be very hard if you're versing an opponent that has that type of coverage. Moving on here, we have speed, which I scored a 7. So yes, I know he has hail and he gets double speed from Arctozolt, but his speed it's not slow, and that's why it's 7. But his speed, we have Rotom at 298, Arctozolt after Slush Rush 418 and 458, but before that it's 209 and I think I gotta check now. So 209 in Adamant and 229 in Jolly. So not very fast without that hail. As we've seen in my match versus Jonas, I was able to speed creep his Arctozolt with Florges. That is something that's going to be very common, especially if hail's not up. It's very easy to outspeed this Pokemon. Sorry, my dad likes to phone me during these all the time. I don't even know where I was now. Yeah, I was talking about outpacing Arctozolt. So Arctozolt has bulk to be able to deal with attacks, but it's not going to want to be taking attacks if it doesn't have to, since it is like, a really strong part of this team. But a very common thing is going to be outpacing this Pokemon without hail up. So like I just told you guys, we have 298 on Rotom. I mentioned the Arctozolts, 418, 458 after Slush Rush, 209, 229 without it. Hoopa at 262, Quillfish at 295, Savali Fairy at 317, and Scyther at 339. So it's not slow by any means, but in that sword tier, there's a lot of faster teams. There's a lot of teams that have overall faster speed. Again, with that hail up, it makes this team definitely not a 7.5, but without that hail, it's not quite as potent. So that's why I've kind of took it a little bit in the middle here. So not to mention just the speed, he has a lot of options to deal with faster teams, which make it really good. He has T-Wave on a lot of Pokemon here, a lot of viable options to run T-Wave. I mean, Rotom can run T-Wave, Quillfish can run T-Wave, Savali Fairy can run T-Wave, Odino can run T-Wave. I mean, you could even get ridiculous and run, I think Arctozolt gets T-Wave as well. Yeah. Somebody's going to come in and see that the hail's going down. You're thinking they're going to be switching out the Arctozolt. The opponent's switching in a Revenge Killer, you T-Wave, Pokemon screwed. So very good option for this team. A lot of T-Wave available to send out if he needs to outpace the other team. Or if he finds something Scarfed, right? Or he knows a Scarf is going to be coming. So not the worst in speed by any means. Just not like a top tier speed team. On as well as with momentum and stuff like that. So and then we have hazards, which I scored an 8. I didn't make a hazard right up, I guess. Kinda did. So his team has a little bit of options for defog here. Unfortunately, all his defog options are weak to rocks. So their ability to come in and defog consistently uh, relies on having to run heavy duty boots or nice predictions or making sure rocks just don't go up in general. Scyther, I believe, having defog. I just want to double check that. Yeah, Scyther, Savali Fairy, and Rotom Heat. So Scyther being ×4 weak to rocks, Rotom Heat being weak to rocks, Savali not able to run heavy duty boots without reliable recovery. We have seen Jonas just run straight up rest on it for that recovery, but generally not a really reliable form of recovery. So having all three of those weak to rocks, I mean, I guess you could put this the score a little bit lower, but you have really reliable hazards in terms of screens and rocks and spikes. You have Stealth Rock and Aurorus, who's more than 9 times out of 10 always going to get either Stealth Rocks or Veil Up or both, which is really annoying to deal with. And then you have Quillfish, who can set up Toxic Spikes or Spikes. And then you have Defog in those 3 Pokemon that I just mentioned. So the ability to set up either Stealth Rock, Spikes, or Toxic Spikes is really strong. It frees up move slots for other Pokemon. If he's running Rocks on Aurorus and he doesn't need Spikes, the Rocks are just important enough. He's able to run 4 attacks, or he can stack up with Spikes and Toxic Spikes on Quillfish and just tack on that chip damage, which his team really likes chip damage. And then Quillfish on the other side could run Spikes, and you don't have to run Stealth Rocks, or run Toxic Spikes, you don't have to run Stealth Rocks. And then Auroras can just run Aurora Veil 3 attacks, or like we seen Jonas do, Protect, Freeze Dry, get that Hail Chip, things like that. This is why it's good to have these other options for hazards. Unfortunately, his hazard removal is not the greatest. Otherwise, I probably would rate this hazard score a little bit higher. Just because his team is kind of hazard weak. You got Arctozolt weak to rocks, Aurorus weak to rocks, Scyther weak to rocks, and Rotom Heat weak to rocks. Probably could have put the score a little bit lower, but I'm happy with it at an 8. His ability to set up rocks and force the opponent to defog, or set up hail or spikes or toxic spikes and force the opponent to defog is really strong. And that's a really good component to hazard scores that I score. Forcing the opponent to defog is really strong. That probably wraps up hazards. His team doesn't really have any other hazard options. I already mentioned that this team has a lot of status to pass around if it wants to. We're going to move on to momentum, which I scored an 8. So his team, a lot less momentum than Jonas's team. We'll look at his team again. You have, Cobalion with Volt Switch, Moltres U-Turn, Serena U-Turn, Volt Switch on Lantern, and U-Turn Parting Shot on Savali Fairy. So this team has a lot less momentum, but still good momentum. And good momentum cores as well. So you have Rotom Heat going into Quillfish, or Rotom Heat going into Hariyama here if there's a rock type move incoming. So you have Volt Switch on Rotom Heat, you have U-Turn and Parting Shot on Savali Fairy, and you have Scyther with U-Turn as well. So Stab U-Turn on top of that. The momentum as well coming from a lot of setup on this team, allowing this team to snowball very fast. The reason that the momentum is high is because he has screens available and very offensive setup. So you have, Arctozolt, of course, behind the screens, or Slush Rush can just easily wipe out a team with Bolt Beak if unchecked. But you have Nasty Plot on Hoopa. You have Hariyama can easily get out of hand as well. You have Swords Dance on Quillfish. You have Swords Dance on Savali Fairy. You have Swords Dance on Scyther. You have that Calm Mind Refresh set on Odino. These are things that can easily get out of hand behind screens and snowball and give him a really, really high differential win, or just catch the opponent off guard mid-stage of the match and, clean up the rest of the game. So that is a strong core component of my score on this momentum, is his ability to set up behind screens or without screens. His team is bulky enough to do it with or without. So Nasty Plot Hoopa, I will tell you right now that Nasty Plot Hyperspace Hole, allowing him to bypass Protect extremely hard to break. Base 70 speed, so he's not the fastest. Hits 262. Can definitely be outsped with a lot of Pokemon that do have knockoff, which would be times 4. But we don't know what the item is. Maybe he's running Sash, or maybe he's running Colbur Berry to deal with that. Who knows what it is? Maybe his EVs are spread differently to be able to deal with that. These are really strong parts of his team that make his team a lot more offensive than Jonas. Nasty Plot on Rotom is also really disgusting. You can Nasty Plot, overheat, then Nasty Plot to make his special attack go right back to normal, and then Volt Switch out. Just very, very good options to use behind screens. And like I've said like 4 or 5 times now, that snowball is going to be huge, especially in these playoff matches. I expect to see some setup behind this team, and not just pure offense, 4 attacks type thing. So, but I hope you guys are enjoying these, and like I said, my scores are not be all end all. Please, by all means, comment on these and let me know what you think of your team, if you are okay with revealing some things. If not, I really hope you guys will leave some comments, at least at the end of the season or when your season is over. I just hope you guys are enjoying these and have something to look at and see, a scoreboard or something, right? But yeah, on to the next one. We'll see you on number 22.